What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. All right, Lakers Jazz. So Laker offense came out red hot again in this game. They built a pretty significant lead in the first quarter, and then in the second quarter, they just kind of let go of the rope defensively, and it turned into this very up and down game. But they're able to stay into games because they can score the basketball. They had 70 points in the first half of this particular game. And we talked about this earlier with the Clippers, this concept of advantage creation, advantage extension, and play finishing. The Lakers, those guys for them don't have a ton of defensive talent the way the Clippers do. Like the Clippers are getting that, and Paul George is an excellent wing defender, and Kawhi Leonard is an excellent wing defender, right? Like they have wave after wave of offensive talent that also can play on both ends of the floor, and that's why the Clippers are one of the best teams in the league, and that's why the Lakers are 30-26. But I did think, that game was really just this recent stretch from the Lakers is an excellent example of just how gifted this team is offensively when they have the type of rhythm and flow in the ball movement and player movement that they've had over the course of this last month. And Rui Hachimura in particular was one of the big beneficiaries of this tonight. He had a career high, I think 32. I think his previous career high was 30. But he kept getting small guards on matchups. You'd get Keontae George or Jordan Clarkson on a post up, and the Lakers would break away from their 5-out stuff to give the ball to Rui. They clear the side for him, so he's working with an empty block so that he doesn't have to worry about seeing too much of the floor. That's a concept I've talked a lot about with the Celtics. And to Rui's credit, he didn't settle. He was making physically aggressive moves towards the basket, using his physical advantages to get easy shots at the rim. And in general, I've talked about this before, but for the Laker offense in particular, I've been completely blown away by how much things have turned around for them over the course of the last month or so, because literally early in the season when they would run their 5-out stuff, they were so bad. And then they kind of leaned more into the 4-out stuff, and they kind of a lot of the same stuff they were running last year, right? Like a lot of heavy LeBron James, Anthony Davis post-up attack, a lot of spread pick and roll for Austin Reeves to get into the middle of the floor and make plays. And then suddenly out of nowhere, they went back into this heavy 5-out attack here in January, and it's just clicked for whatever reason. And I'm sure continuity plays a part in it. I'm sure just repetition and practice has played a part in it, but it's really come around in a big way. I think part of it too is at the beginning of the season, D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves in particular just weren't playing well. And now both guys are just playing at a significantly higher level. And when you're two skill guards that are on the roster for the sole purpose of being skill guards, and they're not giving you high level offense, obviously your team is going to be in a position where they underachieve, because all of a sudden the thing you're supposed to be good at, you're bad at, right? And one of the things I kept saying at the beginning of the season, I'm there is shooting on this roster. Taurean Prince can shoot, Austin Reeves can shoot, D'Angelo Russell can shoot, Rui Hachimura can shoot. These guys can shoot. They're just not playing good offense. And now you're kind of seeing it all come together in a lot of ways. I thought Spencer Dinwiddie's first 2 games were really, really impressive. I didn't like the way that Darvin used him in some rotation situations today, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the actual basketball fit makes a ton of sense right away. He had a couple of lobs tonight to Anthony Davis and to Jackson Hayes. He had 2 self-created threes. He had a jab step 3 out of the right corner that he hit. And then in the second half, he had a pull-up 3 and pick and roll where he got the defender kind of pinned on his backside and rose up right at the top of the key and knocked it down. You're seeing some of that higher level athlete shot creation, which is something that Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell are coverage-based shot makers. What that means is they can hit shots when the coverage dictates it. They get a defender pinned on the screen, they're working into the middle of the floor, the team's guarding it 2-on-2 instead of 3-on-2. So the big man's in a drop coverage and he's going back towards the rim to worry about Anthony Davis. And here's this opening in the middle of the floor that he can capitalize on, and then Austin Reeves has some grift in him where he can get some stuff done in ISO just by getting defenders out of position and making plays. But they don't really have a guy that can get to his spots on the perimeter and rise up and knock down shots other than LeBron James. And that's where Spencer Dinwiddie is like a huge addition. And then secondly, he can just beat people off the dribble. Like the Anthony Davis lob in the first half, that was an ISO play where he just kind of powered through his man and then got the rim protector to step up, I think it was Lauri Markkanen, got the pass over the top, and AD was able to dunk it in. Like that's an element to the offense that just hasn't really been there. Having a guard that can just beat his man off the dribble to then draw in that help defender to then make a play. And I think in specific situations, that'll be really valuable. Like we've talked about this a lot. Last year, remember in the Dallas Mavericks game where LeBron hurt his foot, how the Dallas Mavericks were doing a ton of switching, and in the first half, LeBron and AD weren't being super physically aggressive, so it wasn't working. But in the second half, it was like LeBron, AD post-ups every time down the floor, bullying their way to the rim. Like, this gives you another option there. Like, now in the switching scheme, you can use Spencer to help beat switches because, again, Austin and D'Lo are more... They do better in screening actions. It's kind of similar thing to like Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro. Like Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro, when they can come off of screens and kind of take advantage of the stuff that's baked into the coverage, they're really, really good. But then against a switching scheme where it's more important for them to beat people off the bounce, they can struggle a little bit. D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves kind of fall into that same category. And Spencer Dinwiddie to me is just a more physically imposing version of that type of guard. Darvin Ham. There's a stretch in this game where I thought the Lakers were going to blow it. They were up big most of the first half. And then in that second quarter stretch, they kind of let go of the rope defensively, but they were at least scoring most of the time down the floor. And one of the things that I talked about in the Spencer Dinwiddie signing video that I did was the idea of the potential of a 3-guard lineup. And specifically, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie, in combination to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, is just a ton of offensive skill. But specifically what makes that work is the Lakers don't really have a great option at the 3 because Jared Vanderbilt's out, right? Like Taurean Prince is not that good defensively. Like there will be nights where it makes sense to play him there, but like there'll be nights where it doesn't, right? Then Rui Hachimura, certain matchups, especially against switching schemes or teams that don't have a ton of perimeter talent on offense, where he doesn't have to chase a ton of players over to the top of screens, he could be useful there. But maybe in a different matchup, you want Max Christie there because maybe you're playing against a team and you need someone to chase Steph Curry around all night long, right? Like that 3-man is going to be very matchup dependent. But you can get away with a smaller player there in certain matchups when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis on the floor. In this particular game, the Lakers started Rui at the 4, Taurean Prince at the 3. And then Darvin, in the late second quarter, right before the half, he tried to go find a reason to get Spencer Dinwiddie on the floor in a 3-guard lineup. Now, the obvious solution there is put Spencer in for Taurean Prince. You put Spencer in for Taurean Prince, you maintain your size on the front line. Rui Hachimura is a huge forward that can help you on the glass, that can help you just in general with your overall physicality, and you have Anthony Davis, right? And against a smaller Jazz team, that can work. And I mean, here's the thing. The Jazz are actually bigger than you'd think because they were going massive in the front line with like John Collins, Lauri Markkanen, and Walker Kessler in this game. And in this particular lineup stretch, I think Kessler and Markkanen were both on the floor. But what ended up happening is instead, Darvin goes, no, we're going to take Rui out of the game. And so we're going to play this 3-guard lineup with one of the least physically imposing wings in the league in Taurean Prince at the 4. Now you're just preposterously small. You have no chance. Taurean had just finished getting barbecued by Jordan Clarkson in the middle of the second quarter. Now he's in this matchup with Lauri Markkanen where he has absolutely no chance. Lauri gets a quick 4 points, and all of a sudden it's a 1-point game going into halftime. And there was absolutely no case for it. Like Taurean was not having a good game. He had this weird play where he was driving along the right side of the floor in transition, and like Spencer Dinwiddie was completely unguarded in the right corner, just like completely unguarded. And instead he drove through to the left side, ignored Spencer, and turned the ball over. He either turned it over through a bad shot, but like basically no advantage was created. He had several other offensive possessions where he made poor reads. And then on the defensive end of the floor, he was just not playing well. Like he wasn't playing well on either end of the floor. There was no case at all whatsoever for Taurean to be given that opportunity at the 4 over Rui, who, by the way, had like, was literally walking around engulfed in flames. He was red hot in that first half. Career high scoring night. And in a stretch to end the half, Darvin goes like, actually, we're going to go with Taurean at the 4 when there's no reason. He hasn't been playing well enough to deserve that opportunity. Makes no sense from the standpoint of lineup construction. You have Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler on the floor, so you're way too small in the front line. It was one of the most confounding lineup decisions that I've ever seen. And at one point in the second half, the Lakers were up by like 12 and Taurean Prince was a -6. And like one of the reasons why it concerns me is like Darvin is, and this has been something we talked about all season, Darvin very clearly is attached to Taurean Prince. Not the most unheard of thing in the world. Every coach has like a specific player that they're very invested in. I had Warriors fans telling me on Twitter today, like it reminded them of Anthony Lamb with the Warriors last year, where Steve Kerr would just play him all the time. And like, so it's not entirely unheard of. But the problem is in this particular situation is Taurean's consistently playing over way better players. And when that happens, you're cutting into your margin. And this is not a team that has a significant margin for error. One of the things they talk about all the time is like playoff series swing on tiny sequences. That like even a 5-game gentleman sweep or a 6-game series can actually kind of come down to a handful of tiny sequences where games swing one way or another and the entire dynamic of the series changes. That type of mistake made against a good team could cost you a series. Or rather, it could cost you a game, which could in turn cost you a series. And like one of the things that I talked about a lot around the trade deadline is like, I don't know, even if the Lakers were to make a deal, if Darvin wouldn't just play Taurean Prince anyway. He started him more than twice as many times this year as he did in the previous, as other teams did in the previous 3 years combined. It's very clear this is an outlier type of relationship that we're seeing from these particular two. And like do you guys remember when I did that rant? God, I can't even remember which team. I think it was with the Kings. Might have been this morning. But I was talking about like falling back on habits. Like you have these, like your deeper elements of your character are what shine through when the shit hits the fan. It's a big part of why I talk about habits and discipline in the regular season. Because in my opinion, if you're a team where your habit is to play defense a certain way, to communicate, to make extra efforts, to play with physical force, when that is your habit, then all of a sudden, when it's game 3 of a 1-1 series, and it's all of a sudden your team gets punched in the mouth by a run, and you're down by 7 in the early fourth quarter, when the shit hits the fan, you guys will look around at each other and you'll defend and you'll lean on those habits. That's why I think that stuff matters so much. Those things are what carry you when you get into the precarious situations down the line. What scares me for the Lakers is Darvin, his default, when he doesn't know what to do, he goes to Taurean. And Taurean is not one of the Lakers' 5 best players. And so that will, in some situations on the matchups, it'll work, but in a lot of situations it won't. And it could cut into the margin for error for a Lakers team that is already super thin. Last note on the Lakers, they've got to find a way to connect this offensive success they're having with the defensive potential we know they need to have. As good as this Laker offense has been, it's not as good as the Denver Nuggets were last year. And if you're not going to be as good as the Denver Nuggets were last year, by the way, for all the talk about the Denver Nuggets defense, they defended pretty damn well when they got into the postseason, and they've been an even better defense this year than they were last year in the regular season. But like the Lakers don't even have as much margin for error, don't even have close to as much margin for error on defense as the Nuggets have. They have to be a good defense in addition to being a good offense. And so post All-Star break, really, really going to be zeroing in on the defensive end of the floor for the Lakers to see if they can make the necessary strides there before they get to the postseason.